Seattle made Kurt Cobain a millionaire. The city turned a homeless kid from Aberdeen into the voice of a generation, the reluctant king of grunge who defined the 1990s. But on April 5, 1994, that same city watched him die alone in a greenhouse above Lake Washington, just miles from where his dream began. The success Seattle gave him became the prison that killed him. This is the story of how the grunge capital created its greatest icon, then couldn't save him from the silence. Seattle Dreams. The Escape from Aberdeen Hell. 1988. Kurt Cobain arrived in Seattle with a broken guitar, angry lyrics, and desperate hope. Aberdeen had destroyed him. The divorce, 10 different homes, refrigerator boxes, chronic stomach pain doctors couldn't diagnose. Seattle's underground scene felt like salvation. The city's basement shows became Kurt's church, RKCNDYOK Hotel, Crocodile Cafe. Sub Pop Records promised authenticity. They signed local bands, pressed limited vinyl, built community. Kurt met Kurt Novoselic here, the towering bassist who became his anchor. They rehearsed daily, rotating drummers until chemistry clicked. In 1988, Kurt chose the name Nirvana, the state of perfection, he said, never believing he'd reach it. Their first sub-pop single, Love Buzz, sold out immediately. Kurt heard his song on college radio and cried. Seattle was working, but warning signs flickered. Sub-pop had no money, no newsjoury. Bleach disappeared from shelves because the label couldn't afford reprints. The underground scene felt like family until you wanted more. Then Seattle called you a sellout. Nevermind explosion. When Seattle became mainstream. September 24, 1991. Nevermind hit #1, knocking Michael Jackson off the throne. Kurt Cobain, the kid who slept under bridges, had created America's its album. Seattle exploded. MTV stopped playing hair metal, started playing grunge. The grunge capital was born, and Kurt was its accidental king. If you lived through 1991, you remember Smells Like Teen Spirit on MTV. That distorted riff, Kurt's voice shifting from whisper to scream. It was punk, pop, and dandis, and it came from Seattle. But the backlash began immediately. Kurt's punk friends called him sellout. The underground scene treated him like a traitor. Major label, radio-friendly album, MTV anthem, Seattle's brutal rule. You could be successful or authentic. Never both. The pressure amplified when Kurt met Courtney Love in late 1991. Their relationship was immediate, intense, publicly condemned. Courtney was Hollywood, ambitious, everything Seattle despised. When she became pregnant in 1992, Vanity Fair published a false article about drug use. Child Services investigated. Seattle musicians distanced themselves. Reading Festival, August 1992. Kurt appeared on stage in a wheelchair wearing a hospital gown, mocking media portrayals. 60,000 went insane. Backstage, he vomited from chronic stomach pain that had tortured him since 15. The performance was brilliant theater. The reality was darker. Heroin stopped the agony when nothing else would. In his journal, if I'm going to feel like a junkie every day anyway, I might as well become one. Seattle didn't see the medical crisis. The city saw a star falling, and the response was silence. Lake Washington isolation. Success as prison. Kurt and Courtney bought a $1.5 million mansion on Lake Washington Boulevard East, Seattle's wealthiest neighborhood. The house sat among tech executives and old money families who'd never heard of Nirvana. Kurt went from refrigerator boxes to a greenhouse, overlooking the city that once gave him hope. But the mansion became prison. Neighbors weren't musicians. They were Microsoft millionaires who called police when Kurt's friends appeared. The Seattle scene felt impossibly distant. Success meant the rich neighborhood, and the rich neighborhood had no idea who he was. Mark Lanegan later said, Seattle enabled him, then abandoned him. The city loved the idea of Kurt Cobain, but didn't know how to help the actual person. We all saw him drowning, and nobody hewed a rope. Lanegan visited late 1992, and found Kurt alone, in darkness, unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to leave because Seattle decided he was too famous. The chronic pain worsened. Seattle's medical system couldn't diagnose it. Medication didn't work. Diet changes didn't work. Only heroin stopped the torture, and Seattle's grunge scene made it readily available. The city's dark secret, the underground culture that created great music, also created addiction infrastructure. In Euro 1993 was Kurt's rejection of everything. Nevermind represented raw, abrasive, unmarketable. Proof Seattle hadn't sold him out, but it still sold million. MTV played the videos anyway. Kurt couldn't escape success, and Seattle couldn't forgive him for it. MTV Unplugged. Seattle's funeral for Kurt, November 18, 1993. MTV Unplugged in New York. But Kurt's mind was in Seattle. He designed the stage like a funeral. Black roses, stargazer lilies, dim lighting, candles, green cardigan, unwashed hair, looking 26 and ancient simultaneously. He hadn't rehearsed. Backstage, withdrawal symptoms and stomach pain. Someone got him medication just to perform. MTV crew later recalled he looked like he was attending his own wake. He was. This was dubbed by. The performance was haunting. About a girl, cracked with vulnerability. Where did you sleep last night? Became elegy. Kurt held the last note, eyes closed, pouring everything. Then he opened his eyes, looked at the camera. That look said, "You can't save me. Seattle can't save me. I can't even save myself." Eddie Vedder tried calling repeatedly in late 1993. "We need to talk," he messaged. Kurt never called back. Years later, Vedder admitted, "We all saw the signs. Isolation, addiction, depression. But Seattle had this code where you didn't interfere. That code killed him. I should have broken down his door. I didn't, and I'll regret that forever." Buzz Osborne visited Seattle frequently, watched the grunge scene implode. Seattle wasn't ready for fame, he said in 2002. The city built this culture around being underground, authentic, anti-corporate. Then Nevermind happened and Seattle became the biggest thing. Nobody knew how to handle it. The scene turned on Kurt because he represented everything they claimed to hate. But he didn't ask for it. He just wrote songs. The final silence, March to April 9, March 1st, 1994. Rome. Kurt overdosed on 50 hypno pills. Courtney found him unconscious at 6:30 a.m. She didn't call an ambulance for 45 minutes, 20 hours in a coma. Official story, accident. Hotel staff saw champagne bottles, a note, suicide attempt. The world moved on. Kurt returned to Seattle in early March. The city felt like a tomb. He agreed to LA rehab, but after 2 days climbed a 6-foot wall and escaped. Bought a ticket back to Seattle. Q, or what used to be home before success destroyed the word's meaning. April 1st. Seattle police confiscated Kurt's guns after domestic disputes, but they missed the greenhouse. Missed the Remington Model 11 shotgun Dylan Carlson purchased for him. Believing Kurt's story about Uskillers, the final days remain disputed. Some say Kurt was alone in the greenhouse, writing his suicide note to Buddha, his imaginary childhood friend. Some say he tried calling friends. Nobody answered. Mark Lanegan later said, "Did Seattle's silence kill Kurt? That's what I ask myself. The city created this culture where you didn't reach out, didn't ask for help, didn't admit weakness. That's punk rock bullshit that costs lives." The suicide note, addressed to Buddha. "I don't have the passion anymore. I'd rather be dead than cool. The worst crime I can think of would be to pull people off by faking it, pretending I'm having 100% fun." He ended with Neil Young's words, "It's better to burn out than to fade away." Then added in larger letters, "Please keep going, Courtney. For Frances. For her life will be so much happier without me. I love you, I love you." April 5, 1994. Estimated time of death. Kurt Cobain died alone in a greenhouse, with a shotgun. Seattle just miles away. buzzed with normal life. April 8th. Electrician Gary Smith arrived for security lighting. Rang doorbell. No answer. Walked to greenhouse. Saw a body through glass. Thought someone was sleeping. Then saw the blood. What Seattle lost. When Kurt's mother Wendy heard the news, she told reporters, "Now he's gone and joined that stupid club, the 27 Club." Jimi Hendrix, who had also lived in Seattle, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and now Kurt Cobain. More than 7,000 people gathered at Seattle Center for a public memorial. Chris Novoselic, Dave Grohl, producers' friends, Courtney, and even his father Don attended a private service. Kurt's body was cremated. Some ashes were scattered in the Wishkah River, the same river in Aberdeen where he claimed to have slept homeless. 30 years later, Seattle still grapples with what happened. Did the city's grunge scene enable his addiction? Did Seattle's unwritten code against asking for help contribute to his isolation? Did the success the city gave him become the prison that killed him? These questions haunt the musicians who survived. Chris Novoselic later reflected, Kurt had an ethic from punk rock. There are no special rock bands. There are no great musicians. Just feel the rhythm and let it pour out. That's how Kurt spoke to us in our hearts. But Seattle couldn't protect that heart once the world wanted it. If you lived through the 90s in Seattle, or if you followed grunge from afar, you carry April 8, 1994 with you. You remember how the world stopped. You remember understanding that grunge had died that day, that Seattle's underground dream had ended, that alternative music would never recover. But here's what Kurt's story teaches us. Success doesn't cure pain. Fame doesn't fix isolation. Money doesn't buy mental health. A city can love your art and still fail to save your life. Seattle made Kurt Cobain a king, then watched him die alone because nobody knew how to break the silence. If you're suffering right now, if you feel isolated, even when surrounded by success, if chronic pain or addiction has you trapped, please know this: you are not alone. There is help. There are people who care. Kurt's tragedy doesn't have to be yours. Talk to someone. Reach out. Break the silence before it becomes permanent. Rest in peace, Kurt Donald Cobain. February 20th, 1967 to April 5th, 1994. Seattle's grunge king who never wanted a throne, who died alone in a mansion overlooking the city that made him famous but couldn't save him. Your music remains. Your pain is understood. Your silence ended, but your voice will never fade.